Hey, Mr. McConkey. I just wanted to say before I begin, thank you so much for being very understanding of my schedule and everything else. It's very nice that you were willing to accommodate me and allow me to film myself for my presentation. I really appreciate it. So, I'm going to discuss how I'm going to teach my lesson today, but before I begin, I just wanted to talk about the 3 units I had. I have a grassland ecosystem, a marine ecosystem, and then finally I have the desert ecosystem. So I have my Learning Analytic page is a Moodle course, and so right here I have everything from my marine ecosystems, from a Quizlet to a Nearpod, grassland ecosystems and Kahoot, and Grassland Crafts blog, and then I have my desert, which is what we're going to be focusing on today, and then I have my ecosystems, final things like the test, their collaborative summative project, and my lesson plan, which is for you to access. So for my desert ecosystem, I'm going to have my students listen to a podcast out of class and come in prepared to work on their summative assignment. So my anticipatory set I have is right here. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. So it says, I'm going to have my students write down 2 questions or comments they had about the podcast they were supposed to watch the previous night. The questions or comments will be discussed after we listen to the podcast a second time. Now, I know this is a little confusing because I have video and watch in here, but it is a podcast that they're supposed to listen to, which is hosted on my Moodle page, and all they have to do is click on the podcast link right here, and it'll take them to my podcast. They can listen. And then while they're listening, I also have the script right here that allows them to listen to what's going on in the podcast. And if they don't want to listen to the podcast again to take notes, they can always pull information out of the script I have posted. I'm going to assign my podcast around 3 days before they were supposed to listen, like we're going to be focusing on it in class. This way, it gives students who don't have access to Wi-Fi a chance to listen to it, go somewhere, ask me to listen to it after school, go to the library, etc. And then for even my ELLs in my class, if I have any, giving them the information a few days in advance helps to really solidify their understanding of it in English. So that's why I'm assigning it early, even though we're going to be focusing on it later. Then I'm going to actually talk about how I'm going to teach it then. Well, how we're going to have class. So I'm going to pull that up on my lesson plans. Just give me 1 second. So let's scroll down. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to assign the podcast a few days prior. Once again, just for Wi-Fi and for English language help. So at home, my students, let's move that out of my face a little bit, are to take notes on their OneNote page. They have the login already. I put a link to it on my Moodle though, just so they know where it is, even at home. They have free reign of their notes, so I don't have any structure behind it. Whatever helps them study is what I want them to take away from the class. Learn how to take their own notes. And then they will also have access to the podcast once again, so that the podcast script, so that's also helpful for when they're taking notes and listening to the podcast. So when my students get to class, I am going to have them reread the podcast script in class quietly before beginning our class discussion. So this way, if they hadn't had any questions, maybe this will jog their memory, and with my anticipatory set, they can have something to discuss. So then I will have my class gather around, and we would discuss what they didn't know, or had any questions, or what they thought. I think it's very helpful for that. Then I can gauge on what their knowledge is. While we're still in that group circle, I'd have another discussion So I have 3 lesson questions, and so these are: what type of deserts are there? Why is Antarctica considered a desert? And what types of plants flourish in the desert and why? These questions can help me gauge my students' understanding of the desert. And so if I feel they don't have an understanding of what I tried to teach in my podcast, I can take the time then in class to reteach the lesson. So then I'm going to begin my summative or collaborative group project and have my students begin working on it. The rubric is on Moodle, but I also am going to print it out for my students. I think it's nice to have a digital copy and a copy in hand in person. I work best with paper in my hands, so I just want to give my students resources for both. To make sure my students are on task, I will be constantly walking throughout the classroom, group to group, making sure they're on task and getting their questions answered. I know sometimes whenever the teacher is just sitting at their desk grading papers, a lot of students take that as a time to goof off or not get their work done. So I will be very active within my classroom, making sure they know I want to help them. I'm just going to pull up my rubric here for the summative project real fast. So it's an ecosystem digital diorama. So pretty much I'm going to have them make a diorama online. I think this is really cool. They're going to use Cloud and collaborate, each partner. So I was thinking they could break up their project. So one person could take animals, one person could take plants, one person could do the backdrop, and one person could do the key. So then I know that they've each done their fair share, and they're supposed to tell me that. So right here I have, with a partner, you'll be collaborating over the cloud to create a digital diorama of the ecosystem of your choice. Create the diorama using either Google Slides or Docs to create an image of what you think the ecosystem should look like. When you have finished creating your digital diorama, save as a PDF and print. We will hang these in the classroom after you and your partner present the diorama to the class. So here's what I want them to include, and then here's the points awarded per section. So it's a pretty easy to understand topic or project. So I hope they enjoy it, because I really liked doing dioramas when I was in school. I think that is all I have planned for that. And then to close my class, I'm just going to pull it up real fast for you. Let's scroll down a little bit. So I just wanted to go back at the beginning of my unit, and not even just of the desert unit, of the grasslands. I had my students write on a note card where they want to travel in the world and what type of ecosystem they think it was. And so I'm bringing their cards back to the final day, and they're going to evaluate their cards and their answers. So I'm going to ask them if their answer changed or stayed the same, and how their new knowledge changed their answers. So once I got their responses, I think I'm going to do it in a think, pair, share, just to get the knowledge flowing, and so they're not afraid to share what's going on. Or even just change their note cards and hand it back to me. It'll be interesting to see how much their answers have varied. Alright, I think that's all I have to say. So thank you for your understanding, Mr. McConkey, and have a great winter break, and good luck with the starting of new school year and new school. See ya. Yeah.